So this is our square completely finished, and we have only got one end at the beginning and the end of the outside edge to sew in, but I'm going to leave these for the time being. Now I've put my square, I made sure that it is what I call, we're looking at it in the right direction. My little stitch marker is still in the top right corner, so this is the way that we are going to be facing it for the next round. And this is another round of continuous join as you go, but it's worked around, rather than as a square, it's worked as an edge or a border all the way around of more squares. So to go all the way around, we need 12, and your pattern will have told you the 12 to make. And as I suggest in the pattern, you spear them onto a knitting needle in the right order, so that the very first square that you're going to be attaching is on the top and the last one is on the bottom, but you'll see that in the pattern. And this way it's just a case of pulling them off one by one and attaching them, and you don't need to worry about making sure that you've got the colours in the right order, because you've already done that. It is a good idea now and again just to keep checking that you still have the alternate prints in plain, because say you've missed a square by mistake, that will have thrown it all out. So just keep that as a reminder. But if you've got your 12 squares in the right order on your knitting needle, it's plain sailing. So we're going to take the very first one, and like I said before, I just check that the right way up for joining is where my final round of the squares is on its front. And I'm going to put this down here. So up here is the stitch marker, and just right down from that, so we're lining up with the corner, is my first square for the next section, and there'll be a diagram to see in the pattern as well. Now we're going to be using the same colour, and this is this pale silver, and it's going to look identical to this. It's just that we're doing it in a separate section so that we don't get the squares mixed up. And again, there's another tutorial that shows you how to do this on my YouTube channel. It's in the, I'll put a link to it in here, but it is in the playlist, which is all about joining. So what we're going to do is attach the yarn and work our half treble, 3 half trebles in each of the spaces up the side of this square till we get to this point. And then we're going to join it along here. And I'm actually just going to go ahead and do that, and then I'll come back and show you what happens when we get to this bit. So there we have the first 2 sides of my new square attached, and I'm just about at this corner. This round is actually a lot more straightforward than doing the 4 squares together. You'll be pleased to know we don't have this funny little bit in the middle to do. So all we need to do here is to put the 3 half trebles into the corner for half of the corner of this square. And then we're going to come down here, but before we do that, we want to slip stitch diagonally across into the corner of this square here, like that. And then we can swing it round and come down. So that's us working down this side of the square, and I'll come back at that point. So here we are, I'm down at the bottom of this first square of the new round, and I've done my half corner as usual. So now I just need to pull the second square off, get it in the right side, and I'm ready to start joining round here. So I will come up, joining up here, and then I'll show you what happens here. And then we come along, and this time we come down. So I'll show you that. So I'll be back in just a minute. I'm pretty sure you've guessed already what happens when you come up to this corner. I've joined this new square of my round up one side, and I've now put in my 3 half trebles in the corner. Just go right over to this corner, which is diagonally across, and put in a slip stitch. And then you can continue with the top row of this square. That's the last of that corner, and then so on. So you can see that that forms a nice neat center, just like the center in the middle one. So I'm going to work along here, and then I'm going to come down this side because we want to start to put our corner square in, and I'll be back at that point. I've come along to the corner here, and I'll just take you down there. As you can see, if I start swinging things around here, it can get quite confusing, which is why always look for the stitch marker that you've put in your top right hand corner, and that will keep you right. And I have just done my 3 half trebles in the corner of this square, and I'm just going to slip stitch into the corner of the square next to it, and then I can come down the side. 1, 2, 3, and so on. We're coming down this side now to complete the 3 sides of this pale pink circle before we start to attach the corner square. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. We've got the last space before the corner, and then into that corner. Just let your hook find it. 1, 2, 3. Again, we're not going to come along the bottom. We're just going to leave 3 sides of that pale pink square and take our next. This is the Prince square, and I'm just going to lay it now. You can see that it is sitting proud of the rest of them because it's forming my new corner. And this one is going to go up and join to this square, and then along here and stop at that point. So you don't come down this side. You're only, although you're doing 3 sides of each square on the sides of the middle, the corner ones you just put in 2 sides, because it kind of makes sense. If you were to come up, around and down, you'd be at a dead end because you want to be here, or sorry, you want to be here to start your next square. So we've got 2 sides of the corner to make, and again slip stitching across into the diagonal side of this diagonal corner to put your corner of the square. I'm not getting my words out to this afternoon. Come up here, treble 3 half. See, I'm going to start again. You put your 3 half trebles in this corner, and then work up here, put 3 half trebles into this corner, slip stitch into this diagonally across, and then along to there and stop. So I'm going to do that, and I'll come back just to show you how you start the next square, and then it's plain sailing. You just need to go all the way round until you get back to where you started. So I will see you at this point. So as you can see, I've done my 2 sides of that square, and really you now have the tools to get yourself round all the sides of this part of the join, because you're just adding and working 3 sides for each square, remembering to do your crossover diagonally when you're joining the corners, and then you come and you do your next corner, which is just 2 sides, and then so on all the way round. Now, as I showed you the original, my main blanket, which I've got past this stage, it does seem a bit counterproductive to me to continue making this, because this is all going to get ripped out, and these squares are going to be added to later round of the blanket. So if you feel that you have got the gist of going around here with the 3 sides, I might not bother adding all of these in. I'll see. That sounds as if I'm just cutting corners, but really I'm doubling up on what I've already done. So as I say, 3 sides, and you can see quite clearly that the outside edge so far is unworked. There's no grey edging on the outside, and extremely important that you remember to do the grey edging. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I've convinced myself. I'm going to zip round all the squares on this part just to let you see what happens with the outside edge, and that will give you a good grounding for the next 2 rounds, is it, afterwards? Can't even remember. No, just one more round after this, and then we're on to something a little bit different. As you can see and hear, I've had a bit of a break over Christmas and New Year, so coming back to this after a couple of weeks, I'm really having to jog my memory on what I'm doing here. So it's not maybe the most professional video, but you should manage to work your way around using the video, but mainly the pattern. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work round my 3 sides all the way round until I'm back to the beginning, and then I'll show you how to do the outside edge. So I'll see you, it'll take me a little while. I'll see you later. I've now joined all the squares of this section, as you can see. It's a little bit difficult to put it all under the camera at once, but let's look for the stitch marker, which is, let me see, here. If I lift up here, these were the very first 4 squares that I joined with the continuous join as you go, and then I started with this square immediately below the bottom right square of the center and worked round joining these ones, and I have come back to this point, and that was the square I started with, and this was my last one. Now I'm just going to put the camera back onto the tripod and I'll show you what happens for the outside edge. This is the point where I put my last join in, and there is the first 3 half trebles of this corner. This was my last square. I came along here and down here. Now I'm just going to leave this, I'm not going to join this to the previous square just yet. I am now ready to start and work the outside edge, and bear in mind that this outside edge is one of the most common things that people forget to do. They've now got their squares all attached, and that seems as if that's all that needs to be done, but remember always that there's the outside edge to complete before you move on to the next section, and if you don't do that, it throws everything out. So this is what we're going to do now. Not much really to have to explain. Let's have a look at this. I've come down here and I've put in my 3 half trebles, and I'm going to chain 2 to make the corner, and 3 half trebles. complete the square. Like that. This corner has only got half of it made so far. This was the very first corner. Excuse me. So when I eventually come all the way back round and finish that one with 3 half trebles, then I will slip stitch into this corner and that will join everything up. But for now, my direction of travel is to go along here and then start working all the way around the perimeter of the squares. So just the simple half treble clusters as usual. So I'm going to rattle along here quite quickly. And the corner is just exactly as you would expect it. Half treble 3, chain 2 and half treble 3. So I'll just get along there. Doesn't take as long as you would think to get all the way round. And for those of you who are really still unsure why I'm doing this in sections instead of doing the whole thing as continuous join as you go, like I said before, it's because of the colours changing in the squares with the variegated versus the plain yarn, and I just felt that it would be possibly more difficult to lay all the squares out and then attach them without getting into a mix-up with the colours. So I thought if we just did the 4 squares and then the rounds separately, it would be easier to manage. But if you wanted to do all the squares at once, make them all up and then lay them all out on a bed or the floor, or if you have a huge table, you can do that and do the continuous join as you go in one fell swoop. And like I said before, I think I have a playlist where I have tutorials for the continuous join as you go for, I think, about 9 squares at a time, but bearing in mind that this entire section is 36 squares, I think it is. You know, it's quite a bit bigger. All right, so we're nearly at the point where I want to just talk you over this bit. If you've done my blankets before, this will be second nature to you now, because it's explained in every blanket pattern that I do. But for some people who are doing this for the first time, then it needs to be explained carefully. So I'm just about at the point where the squares join. And if you remember, we've done this before when we did the center section. You want to put the 3 half trebles in to finish this corner and 3 half trebles in to finish this corner. And what we do to make sure that you can get the yarn going from one side to the other quite neatly. So here's our first 3 half trebles, is to chain 1 and then slip stitch into the space between the join, chain 1 and then 3 half trebles, and that's all you need to do. And you should remember that wasn't too long ago that you did that. So that's what to do. Work around the entire perimeter of, so when you've worked all the way around, remembering to complete the corners, the 3 half trebles in each of those joins. When you come along here, you've got 3 half trebles to put in to finish off this corner, and then put in your 3 half trebles. You can chain 2 and slip stitch into the top of the first chain 2, which will complete this corner, and then just slip stitch into this corner to join the 2 together. And that's that whole outside edge complete, and that's section that particular section of the center is also complete. Okay, so what to do next, and I'm not going to go through this again on the video, but the next job will be to swing your blanket back round to where you have your stitch marker in, I forgot this in camera. Yeah, the stitch marker is in the top right of the square of 4 in the middle, and that's the right way up for starting your next round. And the next round starts in just immediately below the bottom corner, and you'll have those all on your knitting needle, I expect, which following the chart in the pattern, you'll have them already. Obviously there are more of them because we're getting bigger as we go out, so you'll just be using the pale grey again, starting and working your 3 sides and working all the way round until you get back to the beginning, and then doing the outside as well. So outside edge. Now, as I say, I'm not going to go through all that again because it's purely and simply a repeat of this part. And then I'll be back to show you the next section of the blanket, and that is just a little bit different. So I'll be back at that point to show you a video tutorial for it. See you then.